Hi guys, me again. I just have a couple more ideas here. So this is probably going to be a short part 2, but for what it's worth. There are a few ideas in this book that I was skeptical about from the beginning. And I was mentioning earlier ideas that sounded really good to me on paper, and some of them worked out and some of them did not work out. But here's some ideas that right from the beginning I was skeptical of. And I just want to read out what those ideas were, maybe talk about why I was skeptical of them, and you can let me know what you thought about these. So, excuse me, from page 12 to 13, he mentions an idea of Sylvia Ashton Warner's, apparently first published in 1963. This is an approach to teaching young native speakers. So not ESL students, but just young native speakers learning how to read. But he says it's an excellent example of how to bring learners' knowledge and experience to their reading. So here are the steps to her approach as Nation describes them. 1. Each learner draws a picture illustrating something that recently happened to them or something that they are very interested in. 2. One by one, the learners take their picture to the teacher, who asks them what it is about. 3. The teacher then writes the learner's description below the picture exactly as the learner said it, using the same words the learner said, even if it is non-standard English. 4. This then becomes the learner's reading text for that day. The learner reads it back to the teacher and then takes it away to practice reading it and to read it to classmates, friends, and family. And then 5, these pictures and texts are all written by the same learner or gathered together to be a personal reading book for that learner. So actually, overall, that strikes me as a really good idea. A way, because quite often the problem with the textbooks is that they're talking about things that are outside the learner's experience, so it's difficult for them to learn how to read them. Something that is actually their story that they have to practice reading sounds like it's good. My only problem with it, maybe this is more of a nitpick, is point number 3, where the teacher writes the learner's description below the picture exactly as the learner said it, using the same words even if it is non-standard English. So maybe for native speaking students, that's fine. But for ESL students, if they are going to take this book away and use it as their reader and practice it and practice it and practice it, then it's good for it to be in standard English, right? Because otherwise, they're just practicing that mistake or those mistakes over and over and over again. And I'm reminded of something I read in the book SLA Research and Language Teaching by Rod Ellis, which I'll link to my review in the description down below. But he talks about how student output can become auto-input. So if they have a mistake and they keep repeating it over and over again, that output, they're also hearing themselves and that becomes their input. And that's how these mistakes will become fossilized, to the point where the students don't even recognize it as a mistake because they're so used to hearing it. So I think that would be the obvious danger with having the students practice those mistakes over and over again. Fine for native speakers. For ESL learners who need to become familiar with the correct grammar, I think I would tweak that to just have the teacher correct any language mistakes necessary as the teacher is writing the book down. As the teacher is writing their description down. Okay, on page 122, Nation talks about how you can make a graph about how many mistakes a student is making. And he talks about this technique. And again, I'm just going to quote him here. He says, when the learners have finished writing a composition, they should count the number of words they have written. To avoid miscounting, they should count up to 50. And he suggests making a little line like this after the 50th word, and then begin at one again. At the end of the composition, they write the number of words they have written. So, for example, 236 words. When the teacher marks the composition, she counts the number of mistakes and calculates the average number of mistakes in every 100 words. This is done by dividing the number of mistakes by the number of words, with the result expressed as a percentage. By having this average mark for each composition, the learners can see if they are improving. They should put a mark on a graph. This makes the learners eager to improve. Their aim is to make the graph go down. Usually there's a fast improvement at the beginning, which slows as the average number of mistakes become less. So there are a few obvious problems with this. I guess one obvious problem is, as has been pointed out by a number of second language learning theorists. In my case, the book I read on this was Lourdes Ortega's Understanding Second Language Acquisition. The number of mistakes a student makes is not actually an indication of how well they're doing in English. Because as they are attempting more complex language, they're going to be making more mistakes. And the more ambitious students who want to get more complex language will have more mistakes. And the more conservative students who are just writing very short, simple sentences are going to have few mistakes because they're not trying ambitious sentences. So thinking that having the students think that they're improving their English because they're making less mistakes seems to me to be an outdated concept. The other problem is the idea that this is on a graph is going to motivate them to improve. I don't know. I mean, I think most students, are naturally motivated to want to avoid mistakes, right? When they write a sentence and when they get it back and the teacher says, yeah, that was good, there was no mistakes in it, that they're naturally happy with that. Students are always motivated to improve their writing, but what good is that graph going to do? Like, the students are going to look at the graph and say, okay, this time I am going to write an essay with less mistakes. And it's just pure willpower to make less grammatical mistakes that's going to cause them to make less grammatical mistakes. I think the motivation to make less mistakes is usually there already. What they need is help making better sentences, not just you made less mistakes on this essay graph. And then the other problem, of course, is as any ESL teacher knows who has ever marked student writing, what counts as a mistake? Okay, so there are some obvious mistakes, like that's the wrong verb form, that is misspelled, those things are obvious. But what about all the things that are like, okay, that doesn't quite sound right, but I think the grammar's okay, or okay, the nuance of that word is a little bit strange, but you're not technically misusing it, or okay, those two words, they don't really collocate together, but is that a mistake, or is that just not native usage? You know, those kind of things. So I had questions about that activity. Last one, he's got a whole chapter on speed reading. And he talks about timing the students as they read, getting students to read a certain amount of words and then trying to get them to increase the amount of words they read each time with the timer. Now, maybe this is just a personal preference, but I find when I'm reading something that I really have to just focus on what I'm reading to absorb the meaning of it. And sometimes, you know, especially being on BookTube or whatever, I can be a little bit too caught up in the number of pages I get read in a day, you know, like must read 20 pages a day. And I find that I'm so concentrated on getting through the pages that sometimes I'm like, wait, I wasn't even concentrating on that last page. I was just so focused on getting to the end of it. And then I'm like, oh, okay, go back to the top of the page and read it again carefully. And this time, don't be so concerned about how fast you're reading it. That's just my experience as a reader. So I can imagine myself in a classroom where they're like, all right, ready, go read. I'm just like, the stress of the timer, I can't focus. Okay, maybe I can get through the words, but am I really kind of truly absorbing it? I don't know. I just thought the timers, the word count, that just sounds all unnecessarily stressful. I just thought, reading fluency will improve with practice. The more you read, the more you encounter words, the more you get practice at decoding them, the faster you will read in the future. But to put that much emphasis on timing the reading, I mean, what are you timing? Timing the amount of words they get through? But I think he did actually say they have to answer comprehension questions about it as well, maybe. But still. I was very ambivalent about that whole chapter on speed reading. And needless to say, I have not used any of that in my classes. So that whole chapter, I read it, but I disregarded it. I haven't used it. Lots of the rest of the book I have tried out with varying degrees of success, as I've been explaining. Okay, so yes, and sorry, one thing. To be fair to Paul Nation, he does address some of this stuff that I've just mentioned on page 72 of the book. So it's not like he's completely oblivious to it. He does address it. So those are some of my thoughts on this book. Let me know what you thought about it. I believe this book is still popular in ESL classrooms around the world. Sorry, not classrooms. Teacher rooms, staff rooms, teacher resource rooms around the world. Let me know what you thought of this book. Thank you very much, and see you next video.